I want to talk about the new Assassin's Creed that's coming out later this year. So the new Assassin's Creed game that's been revealed, and it was revealed a little while ago, but I hadn't gotten a chance to do this until now, is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The trailer was really interesting because one of the first things I noticed right away was the heavy anti-Christian sentiment. It was really interesting because you can tell how that's clearly part of the idea behind the trailer when you pay attention to the words being said in the voiceover compared to the images being shown in the actual trailer itself. So in this video, I wanted to take the time to kind of break down what I saw in the trailer and sort of some of the ideas that are being displayed in the trailer itself. And so I have a few notes about what I saw in the trailer. And I think it would be interesting to just go through it and sort of share with you guys some of the things that I noticed in this trailer. So as the trailer's going along, you hear the voice of the king in the background. And the king is commenting about the different of how he thinks that the Vikings are. So throughout his speech, he's saying the Vikings are people that are heartless. They're people that's godless and a people that murder and kill blindly. What's funny in the trailer is that as the king is saying each one of these phrases, as he's calling the Vikings heartless, it shows the main character, Ivor, walking amongst his men, greeting them and seemingly caring about them, caring about his soldiers. And it's meant to show how the king's words are completely ignorant about how caring the Vikings are. Same thing can be seen with the comments about the Vikings being godless and being people that murder and kill blindly. So as the king says that the Vikings are godless, you see them being pious pagans, worshipping an idol with the priestess anointing Ivor with blood. So it shows that the king is wrong again. These Vikings are not people that are godless. In fact, they're very pious to their Viking gods. And lastly, from the comments, the king's initial comments, you see that he says that the Vikings are people that murder and kill blindly. Because a lot of times we have this perception from movies and different games and entertainment that Vikings were known for raiding and pillaging. And in fact, the Vikings were about as violent as any other group at that time in history, which for all accounts was very violent. Most cultures at that time were very violent. And so the thing is that when the king is saying that they murder and kill violently, again we see an image that subverts what the king is saying, showing his ignorance, because it shows that Ivor and his companions, as they're burning and pillaging this village, they see a woman and a child turn around a corner. But of course, the loving, kind barbarians don't kill them, showing that they're not, in fact, violent and they don't kill and murder blindly. But it's funny how they put this image, even though while they're sparing these two people, this entire village is being burned and ransacked to the ground. So even there you can see how the images in the video undermine the Vikings' whole perception in the trailer of making them seem like they're more benevolent than they actually are. After seeing a few of those images, you see the king saying how the Vikings will never love the land they're in, but it shows them actually building settlements and beginning to establish a new life in the areas of England that they're taking over. And in fact, in history, this happened as the Vikings, as time went on and they kept raiding, eventually they kept taking more and more of England and actually beginning to spread on the land and make it their own. As the trailer continues, you don't really see any more for a bit until eventually you get to something that's very telling. where the king is sitting in his room and he's filling out a document, and as he's speaking, he's saying that he needs to speak to the Vikings in a language that they can understand. Now, this image right here, this part of the scene of the trailer, I think is really important because it shows exactly what I'm saying here. So taking everything that the king has been saying by his ignorant Christian ideals, he's perceiving the Vikings in one way, but the trailer is showing you that, oh, the Vikings in fact are not the way that the king thinks they are, but they're actually very good, people that are very cultured, and they're just trying to live their life. And in this scene, you can see that the king is draped in religious iconography. His crown has crosses, his clothes have crosses, and there's a giant crucifix right behind him as he's sitting on his chair, signing the document. Now, one of the biggest things that I think shows what I'm talking about in this trailer, about showing how Christianity is the enemy to these Vikings, is the fact that this always happens in media, I think. You can see it often where Christians are depicted as hypocrites. And in this case, the king, if he's a Christian, he's supposed to be the one that's benevolent and God-fearing and not be violent. But yet he's signing a document to declare war on these Vikings. And so he's the one that's shown to be the enemy in this trailer, the one that's trying to destroy these great people's way of life. And in that sense, him and his beliefs are made to be the enemy, because they're the ones that are stopping you as the player and your people from living your life, continuing your expansion, and continuing ultimately your belief system and what you're taking with you to every place that you go. The rest of the trailer isn't really interesting. It's just a battle, and it's mostly theatrics to try to make the game look cool. But one of the final things that I think is very important to note in the trailer is during the battle, Ivor is in the middle of a fight, and he actually turns to see an apparition of someone that appears to be Odin himself on the battlefield. And this is very crucial, I think, to the understanding of Viking lore and what the Vikings believe themselves. It ties into why the Vikings would do what they would do, why Vikings would pillage and plunder, and how that's tied into their belief system, because we as humans act based off of what we believe in, and so the Vikings were no different. The reason why they would pillage and plunder is tied to their belief system of Valhalla, and it's interesting that that's the actual name of the game, because of course the Vikings were seeking glory, so they were going to take all these lands, and they didn't care about dying for glory itself, because the ultimate reward for them was Valhalla, to fight at Ragnarok with Odin himself. So it shows how they're living out the fullness of their belief system in what they're doing. And in this game, that's exactly what you're going to do. So imagine, in this game, you're put in the shoes of the Viking. So you're put to sympathize with the Vikings and what they're doing and how they're spreading their whole way of life, their whole culture. And who's the enemy? The enemy is, in this case, the Christian king, King Alfred the Great, that's trying to stop you from spreading your people. He's the wall that you have to get over. And in that sense, he becomes the enemy. Like I said, him and what he represents, which is Christianity, becomes the enemy in this trailer. And I think what really ties it all together is really interesting. At the end of the trailer, you see a bunch of taglines for the trailer and a hashtag so that people can go ahead and tweet about the game. But one of the taglines, the final tagline in the trailer, is to think and conquer like a Viking. And I think that perfectly sums up what I'm saying. The game is putting you in the shoes of the Vikings. And the game wants you to think like a Viking, act like a Viking, see the enemies of the Viking. And when you play this game, that's exactly what's happening to you. You're thinking about how this Christian group is the enemy. Because, of course, Christianity and Western culture is the enemy, since they eradicate and destroy every other culture, and they disrupt people's diversity and way of life. And the evil Christians want to crush you as the Vikings, and so you're not going to let that happen. In this game, you as the player want to attain this glory, and you want to think as a Viking, so you want to plunder, pillage, be a pious Viking, and follow Odin, and ultimately progress your way of life. And so I think from everything that I'm saying, you can subtly see how this trailer makes you as the Viking the hero, and makes King Alfred the Great and Christianity is the enemy. And so what's playing on in this trailer is not so much just two groups of people, but two ways of life and two ideals. But that is everything that I noticed in the trailer itself. I think that something that'll be interesting is in another video I'll talk a little bit about the belief systems and how that plays into each side, because I think that would be interesting to add on to this idea that I'm talking about. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this quick little kind of look through of this trailer and some of the ideas that are being presented in the trailer, and I hope that you take the time to sort of think about them or comment what you think about what I said. And it's funny how this is sort of related to what's going on right now in the US, but I'm glad if you guys heard the video. I hope that you comment and like or dislike the video, and that you ultimately learn something from this, because that's what this is about, seeing what is being presented in some of the media that we consume and thinking about the ideas behind some of the stuff that we watch and play and spend our time on. So thank you for listening, guys, and please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this that are going to be talking about different ideas presented in video games.